What's up? What's up? What's up? What's good? What's good? It's your boy D2 HBCU football coming to you with a brand new show, The Rebuttal. It's real new. Now, this show was supposed to start at 7. Y'all have to forgive your boy. Had some technical difficulties, and we're gonna work them, work the little kinks out, whatever. I got home from work today, power out, the whole neighborhood. So I had to rush to try to get somewhere to bring y'all this show. So ain't the show that I wanted to bring, but it's the show that we got, and we just got to roll with it like that. Man, look, I meant first off, let me stop and just say I appreciate Scotty. This is a long time coming. If me and Scotty done talked about this show, it was something I really didn't want to do. I do the little D2 HBCU football Twitter space every Sunday with 5 other guys. And that was about it, And I go on these shows and we talk SIAC football and yeah, that's it. But I felt it was time for me to like branch out, do my own thing. I was on the show last year with the D2 HBCU Matter show. I was on that, and those guys they doing their thing over there, and I'm gonna do my own thing over here. All right, so y'all bear with me. I'm working on a few things, and we gonna jump right into some SIAC drama because I want y'all to know the SIAC keep a little drama, y'all. Sometimes it get confusing because all we hear about is SWAC drama, right? We hear SWAC, MEAC drama, but SIAC be having their own little drama. See if I can pull up my pictures here so y'all can see what's going on. Appreciate y'all in the chat. What's up, Miss Griffin? TU, in the building. I see a lot of SIAC. I'm finna share my screen with y'all. Um, let's see if we can get this party on the road, dog. First thing up, let's start off with Morehouse, the Morehouse College, right? They've been down. They've been down. Second year, they've had 3 different head coaches in the last 3 years. They got a new coach in Coach Mathis, and I think it's something y'all need to hear out of Coach Mathis, out of his own mouth, about who's joining. As if that video file is a play. We might have to play it by ear. Can't show y'all that one, but it's okay. Cause I got a trick for it. And y'all, this is why I never wanted to do a show, because um I'm not the most what you want to call that? I can't get that video to play. Moving on. If you check my page D2 HBCU football, I'm gonna put it up there. But basically, it's Coach Mathis saying that Ed Reed is joining his staff at Morehouse. Could this be that the Ed Reed is joining the staff at Morehouse? Now, hey, Ed Reed he's been circulating around these streets for quite some time. We know him, most famously for his rant about Bethune-Cookman. It was a whole lot of drama back and forth about whether how he handled that situation. Um, and Coach Mathis said out of his own mouth. Now, see, I wanted to play it because I wanted y'all to hear him say it. Coach Mathis said on a podcast about a week or so ago that Ed Reed is joining his staff. So could that be? A lot of transpired around that Morehouse program because we heard at first the coach that left Grambling was supposed to get that job. Then their alum, one alum, a very prominent alum in the journalistic streets, he went in on it. And hey, they turned out, didn't offer him a job, gave the job to Mathis. And another thing, this whole Morehouse to Division I, that might be a real thing, right? It might be a real thing because on 2 occasions, Coach Mathis has kind of had the slip of the tongue. Coach Mathis said at SIC Media Day with Dr. Cavill, he said that when he was recruiting guys, he recruited guys to be able to play Division I in the next 2 to 3 years. And then he said it again on the podcast that Morehouse, when he was recruiting, he's recruiting guys to play Division I in the next 2 to 3 years. So could Morehouse be going Division I? Could be. I think Ed Reed being at Morehouse probably could help. Now, I haven't seen him around Morehouse yet. I've been looking. I've seen him up in Colorado. But, hey, I think it works, right? I think Morehouse in itself, and I'll say this and I get off my Morehouse bandwagon. If Morehouse ever decides to be good, they're already good in basketball, but if Morehouse decides to be good in football, I think you see the conference and whatever conference that they wind up in, you see it elevate. I think you see that conference because of that brand, the brand of Morehouse. Now, I'm a Tuskegee guy. Everybody know that I'm Tuskegee through and through. I don't like no Morehouse, but I understand business, right? And Tuskegee and Morehouse, they're really aligned from an institutional standpoint. And so I think a good Morehouse brand is good for the SIAC. It's good for whatever conference that they're in. But I will say this, you don't get to a Morehouse to the MEAC or wherever they're going and Tuskegee don't go with them, right? I assume they would get a waiver for Title IX. Yes, now back in the day, Morehouse and Spelman, they kind of worked together because I'm old enough to remember when Spelman had a women's basketball team. That Morehouse Tuskegee basketball game would be packed out. It would be on a Saturday, and it would be Spelman's women's basketball versus our Tigerettes and the men's basketball. So, but I'm pretty sure that they would be able to get a waiver for that, and which gives them the upper hand because a lot of talk around Tuskegee when the Morehouse talk came around was, Tuskegee has been on this whole thing about moving up since 2010. A lot of people don't realize that it kind of fell apart, had a couple different presidents to come in. And then, when new presidents come in, a lot of stuff gets sidetracked. And so those plans kind of got laid aside. But you look at Tuskegee now, I think with a new president that's heavy on athletics, he's heavy on the band. I don't see Tuskegee allowing Morehouse to leave them in Division I. The Tuskegee Morehouse game was on BT back when I was in school. Absolutely. It went from BT, Aspire. I don't know if y'all might be too young to remember when HBCU games were on Aspire TV. I might be telling my age a little bit. Anyway, yeah, so y'all look out for that. Could Ed Reed be on the sidelines at Morehouse? I want to do something else. I'm gonna have commercials and everything. Y'all stick around here. I'm telling y'all, this show gonna be some. You just got to give your boy time. All right, moving on to the next thing. Y'all can't really see this. The coach, the coach who's in everybody's mouth. His name is in everybody's mouth. Coach Teddy Keaton. Coach Keaton is the new head coach at Clark Atlanta University. He hams from Allen University, where he revived that program. Before he got to Allen, he had a stint at Miles, but he had that stint at Miles from Stillman College. Now, I was first introduced to Teddy Keaton and realized who Teddy Keaton was when Teddy Keaton took a Stillman College football program. And he came down in 2011 and beat the famous, legendary coach, Willie Slater. And one of my fondest, well, I won't say fondest memory, but one of the memories that I didn't quite understand the Tuskegee grandeur then. After Tuskegee lost that game, the alums basically chased the president's truck down and told the president they need to fire Slater. And I was so confused because I'm like, man, this man first down season, he loses Stillman. I learned that day there are some people that Tuskegee University believe that they don't lose to. And Stillman College was one of them. And that's how I got introduced to Teddy Keaton. Teddy Keaton goes to Allen. Y'all know the story. Has a pretty good there, with the resources that he had. Basically, he'll say he was trapping with no office, and he's able to put together a pretty good roster, a pretty good team. He busts out with a guy named David Wright, and Teddy Keaton comes out, and they surprised and they beat some people. So Teddy Keaton, like anybody, probably had taken Allen as far as he could take him, given the resources to get the opportunity to go over to another program that's not a rebuild. I don't really like the term rebuild because Clark Atlanta is not a rebuild. Clark Atlanta is a build. Like, you have to build Clark Atlanta. They are known for losing. Okay. They are, I don't want to say losers, but that's what they've consistently done. So all during the offseason, the hype was Teddy Keaton taking David Wright, taking some of his other players with him over to Clark Atlanta, and he was going to go around and turn that program around. I'm on a show, Dr. Cavill's show, and this is why this show is the rebuttal, because I want y'all to go and watch all these other shows, and y'all come back here, and we're going to break it down, and we're going to talk about it. I'm going to, anything I don't think is right, I'm going to have a rebuttal for it right here on this show. Now, he picked Clark Atlanta. The people voted. Okay, so now this poll is a voted poll for people who contribute to the Black College Sports Network and Inside the Sports Lab with Dr. Cavill. He's a numbers guy. He's an analytics guy. Dr. Cavill, he is we call him the dean, the general of HBCU sports. He ranks Clark Atlanta number 4, right? He ranks him number 4. He ranks him over Fort Valley, Miles, Tuskegee, a bunch of other schools. He ranks them number 4. And Teddy Keaton's response to this was, it's rat poison. That this is complete rat poison. And he came on the show Sunday and he talked about how that they put a target on his team's back, right? They got the new red field. They got Clark Atlanta is doing a lot of good things. They got the documentary being filmed there, but he talked about this putting a target on his back. My position is this. It is unrealistic to say that Clark Atlanta is going to finish fourth in D2 football. Do I think Clark Atlanta will be a good team? Yes. Do I think Clark Atlanta will be middle of the pack in SIC? Yes. My goal for or my vision for Clark Atlanta is winning 5 games. If Teddy Keaton can get to 500 for a team, I mean, they didn't win a game last season. Did they win a game? No, they didn't win a game last season because they end up losing to Morehouse. I think they won one game the season before that, probably 2 games the season before that. If Teddy Keaton can get Clark Atlanta to 5 wins, I will help them buy some concrete because they need to build a damn statue in front of Panther Stadium for Teddy Keaton. Because you're talking about decades and decades of losing at Clark Atlanta. This ain't just no get there and let's try to figure it out. You got to know, and this is my thought process behind it. Clark Atlanta has had some good coaches come through that program. I've seen some good, decent Clark Atlanta teams, but it lets me know that it's deeper than just the athletic component at Clark Atlanta. I don't know whether it is an administrative thing. We heard that they had 40-some thousand applicants, being able to get the type of guys that you want into the school. Some people don't grasp that Clark Atlanta has a pretty rigorous academic standard as well. When you think about the Morehouses and the Tuskegee, they have an academic standard as well at Clark Atlanta. And so getting through the administration, the processes, okay? And this is what's going to put me on this rant, okay? Sometimes this is how me and off script got to this point, because sometimes I would just, in his inbox, I would go on these little rants about sometimes our schools don't test their own processes, right? They don't test the dead spots in how certain things and procedures that they have are either dated or just bad procedures. And that ends up impacting everything on your campus and even on the athletic standpoint. So when I look at Clark Atlanta, I'm saying something else got to be wrong, because I've seen some darn good Clark Atlanta teams, some darn good Clark Atlanta programs. When Coach Slater got there, Coach Slater even said, he was like, well, when I looked at the team, and I don't know if y'all know Coach Slater is the legendary coach from Tuskegee that when he got let go from Tuskegee, he took the Clark Atlanta job. And I didn't think he was a good fit for Clark Atlanta because of his personality. I think Clark Atlanta needed a person like Teddy Keaton, a lively person to breathe life. I don't think Slater was a life breather. But when he got there, he was like, man, I look at the roster. The roster was good. He said out his own mouth, like, the roster was good. And he just was trying to figure out what else was wrong. And I think what happened with Coach Slater was he ran into those systematic problems that exist within the institution. Okay. I tweeted a few days ago that the first thing I would do if Kendrick ever becomes the president of an institution, I'm going to find those inadequate, those people who hold up process, whether that person is in admissions, whether that person is in advisement. Like, I'm going to find those people that hold up process, that don't follow procedures, that run students into dead spots, that make our systems bad, because that's where our problems lie. And so Teddy Keaton has kind of talked about that. He's talked about changing the culture, like getting people on campus to buy into your program. So it's more than just the X's and O's at Clark. I think this is probably going to be Teddy Keaton's biggest undertaking to make Clark Atlanta a good team. What I don't want to happen is people to derail what he has going on by having these really high expectations for him. And it's just not going to look like there are people who out there saying that he's going to beat Fort Valley by 3 touchdowns. Say what? He's going to beat who? Which brings me to my other point. I really wish I had my my picture so y'all could see what I had set up, because going into Fort Valley, man, I talk about all the time the big three in the SIAC. There are three major programs, or blue blood programs, left in the SIAC. That's Albany State University, that's Fort Valley State University, and that's Tuskegee University. When I was at Tuskegee, I know Miles is a rivalry now. Miles wasn't no rivalry when I was at Tuskegee. Miles wasn't no rivalry. Miles who you play for homecoming. Like, who lose to Miles? Losing to Miles would probably get you fired at Tuskegee a few years back. And if you don't believe me, next week, hopefully I can have Coach Cumbergy on. Coach Cumbergy lost to Miles one year. It was the year that he took a job at Norfolk State, and then he changed his mind. He came back, right? And when he came back, he opened up that year in Birmingham with Miles, and Miles drug Tuskegee that year. I mean, they beat the brakes off Tuskegee in that year. That next week, and I'm gonna ask about him in his face, so I don't want y'all to think I'm lying. Like Dr. Benjamin Payton was the president then. Dr. Payton called him in, and Dr. Payton said, "Hey, we don't lose the Miles. we don't lose the Miles. You lose the Miles, you'll look for a job." So there was like these schools that are winning now, like Allen, losing back in the day. Tuskegee didn't lose to those teams. You could not lose to certain teams in this conference. But I'm always talking about restoring that day. But to the Fort Valley point, Fort Valley is returning my guy, Kelvin Durham. Kelvin Durham is a 3-year starter. Kelvin Durham is the best quarterback in the SIAC. I know David Wright got the SIAC of Offensive Player of the Year, and he gets all that. But my guy has an interception problem. I mean, he threw 17 interceptions last year. And I look at Kelvin Durham numbers, and I'm just like, oh, okay. Then the conference goes, and I don't know who was mad, who got pissed off, and they put Jayton Adams from Savannah State as a second-team quarterback, as if Kelvin Durham was no longer at Fort Valley, and I was confused, right? How do you pick over Kelvin Durham? I mean, how do you look at the stats? So somebody didn't know what they were talking about. I think they really put a target on Kelvin Durham's back. But we've seen Kelvin Durham every time he goes head to head with David Wright. I mean, look at the stats. Kelvin Durham wins, right? So when we look at this Fort Valley team, they also return, I think, the nastiest tight end. I meant the nasty. If you go and you look at him play, and I promise y'all, I'm gonna put clips up. We're gonna get better so y'all can see. But you want to talk about a nasty tight end? That Sparks kid at Fort Valley, I know a defensive end hate to see him setting the edge, because that boy puts you on your ass. He puts you on your ass. The boy is bad. The boy, he's big, he's strong. I just want Fort Valley to kind of get these tight ends more going in the passing game. Did they lose some wide receivers? Yes, but they still have Anderson. They still have Anderson. The frame. I don't know of a defensive back in the conference that's gonna do well against Anderson, man to man. If you don't have no help over the top, you're not stopping Fort Valley. Then they return Brandon Marshall. Brandon Marshall was 10 yards away from a 1,000-yard rusher last year. He's got Brandon Marshall. Then you go and add to the stable of Brandon Marshall. You get the Wilson kid from Wingate. Wingate is a solid program. He comes in. That Fort Valley, whether they decide to throw the ball around or whether they decide to be a running team, and I'm going to be honest with you, if I'm a coach in the SIAC, I am running the ball. I see the defensive lines in this conference. I see what they're made of. I see how small they are. Very few 300-pound guys on the defensive line in the conference. If I got a running back, I'm running down your throat. The conference went to everybody wanted to throw the ball around and pass the ball around. Okay. Now, in another show, they said the SIAC needs to shore up their passing game to win out of conference game. I'm here to tell you the stats don't show that. The stats show that we can throw the ball around. Hell, Lane threw for 330 yards against Alabama A&M on a blowout last year. What they needed, 600 yards? No, they couldn't run the ball. They couldn't run the ball. Benedict, when they played Lenore Ryan last season, Benedict could run the ball on anybody. Then they got out of conference play, only could muster up 60-plus yards on the ground in Division II playoff. So we have to be able to run the ball. Get back to running the football. Can't nobody stop you. The conference not built to stop running anymore. Okay, the Mike Whites are gone. The Willie Slaters are gone. If you run the ball, and I'm talking about still being balanced because everybody like to see the ball, flying around the field. But if you get you a good back, get you a couple of them boys up front, that's nasty. Stop getting these soft boys up front. You can win some ball games in the SIAC. Now, this Fort Valley CAU game, to be honest with you, David Wright will probably be able to score some points, right? It's a Teddy Keaton offense. He can score. But with the way that they've done Fort Valley this season, with everything that came with Sean Gibbs and the debacle with him at Florida A&M, I've never even seen Fort Valley coaches talk trash, but I've seen a little bit of Fort Valley talking a little trash this season. I'm looking for more like a 31-10, 31-17 type game with that Fort Valley. I don't see that game being close. Maybe the first half, David Wright is able to keep it in, but I just don't see Clark Atlanta having it together. And don't get me wrong, I'm a Teddy Keaton guy, but I just don't see Clark Atlanta being able to hang around with a team like Fort Valley that has built itself for an SIAC championship run. Couple more games we got coming up this week. We have, let me see if I can pull up one more picture for y'all. All right. All right. Now here's the one that got me tweeted. I got tweeted and dogged out. They've been dogging me on show after show after show. The Virginia Union versus Kentucky State matchup. Now, everybody is going to go on to say that Virginia Union is going to beat Kentucky State. It's a given, right? That's what everybody is saying. It's a given. Virginia Union is going to beat the brakes off of Kentucky State, because who is Kentucky State? Virginia Union is ranked number 1 in a lot of polls in Division II football. Now, if I come off as a CIAA hater right here, then I'll just be that. I will wear that proudly. I will wear the CIAA hater badge proudly. Here's my thing. Virginia Union, Jada Byers is amazing in a discussion. I think they have some other good backs in a discussion. I just don't know how good Virginia Union is. I told the guys in the SIAC talk space Sunday, if you take Virginia Union out of the CIAA, even if you put them in the SIAC, where would Virginia Union end up? And if you think for a half a second that Virginia Union had a snowball chance in hell at winning the SIAC last year, you're confused. You are confused. It was not going to happen. Now, can you stop Jada Byers from getting his? No. You cannot. You're not. The team they ran up against in the playoff did not. I think what he rattled off like 130, 140 against in the playoff blowout. Because it's like, what else do they have? Now, in comparison, I just don't say that for any reason. I looked at this Kentucky State team. I liked Kentucky State last year. Kentucky State had a first-year head coach last year, and anybody know me, I do have a soft spot for Kentucky State, right? I feel like Kentucky State, they've gone through a lot because it was just 2 or 3 years ago, Kentucky State didn't even have enough money to have balls to practice with. Kentucky State was under massive attack by their state legislature. Matter of fact, they were only a handful of votes away from being closed. Now, I know a lot of times we don't get to talk about our Division II HBCUs. We focus on our bigger name HBCUs, but we almost lost Kentucky State a few years ago. And they have fought back. They have been diligent. They got a new president. They got a new AD. They've done some things differently at Kentucky State. And so just to see that Kentucky State is existing as a program is really, it does my heart good, because I was, for a little while, I really thought Kentucky State was going to be out of here. And what you see on this screen is a testament, because this is Kentucky State's defensive line. And there's one thing about Kentucky State defensive line. If you notice, these are all graduate students, not transfer graduate students, not recent transfer, except one, Trevor Vines. Trevor Vines transferred from Tuskegee. He came from Alcorn, went to Tuskegee. Now he's at Kentucky State. But for the most part, this defensive line, they are graduate students. Now, let me tell you about these graduate guys. They were on a winning Kentucky State team. They know what winning feels like at Kentucky State. They also have a couple more guys on that defense like Pope, who was at SIC Media Day. They know they've been through the highs, they've been through the lows. Kentucky State was just a team that knocked off Jackson State a few years ago, right? So this is no slouch of a team. Now, they were a really run-heavy team. They got a coach that had a different philosophy. And Coach Huggins, he wants to throw the ball around. So I felt like last year he just didn't quite have the pieces to throw the ball around, which enforcing that leads your defense to play a lot of snaps. And I felt like the defense could hold up at the beginning, but then they played a lot of snaps. But they lost a lot of games really closely. If you go back and look at their first couple of series with Grand Valley State, you will start to see that defensive line is a really strong point for Kentucky State. Why is that important? How well does Virginia Union run the ball against decent defensive lines? They don't. Because the best defensive line, you can argue where it was the Fayetteville State of Virginia Union last year in the CIAA. Fayetteville State beat them the first time. They tend to have trouble. This is going to be an old, experienced defensive line for Kentucky State. And all those guys that's playing, them boys are playing for pride. They are playing, and they got just as many graduate starters on the offensive side. Them boys are playing for pride, because why else would you want to stay in Frankfort, Kentucky? Them folks did not stay in Frankfort, Kentucky to lose. I'm telling you now. And Virginia Union got to make that trip. And if you ever been to Frankfort, it's a trip. And it's not an easy thing to go in Frankfort and win. It's just not. It's not. It ain't something you just walk in and just do. I've seen good teams. I've seen quality 12-0 Tuskegee teams almost get to Kentucky State and trip. Kentucky State got a good chance at pulling this one off. Do I think it'll be a close game? Yes. If the game is low scoring, I'm gonna give it to Virginia Union. If the game is high scoring, you can pack Virginia Union up. You can pack them boys out of the pack of lunch. Put that dog back on the truck. It ain't gonna hunt. So that's like one of my my picks that has gotten a lot of critique, but it is what it is because it's football. The game is played on the field. As they say in church, moving right along. I want to pull something up for y'all since I can share my screen. We got a Thursday night game in the SIAC. We get Central State and Morehead State. Now, we don't talk about Central State enough, and I don't think a lot of people understand that Central State is one of the few football teams that have done well in the Division II playoffs. Central State used to have a football program that was not to be played with. And lately, they have fallen short of that. See if I can get this schedule pulled up here for y'all. I'm gonna get me a producer too. That's gonna be my next thing. Give me a little producer. They help your boy out. All right, that didn't work. Whatever. First show hiccups. Central State on a resurgence. They just had their first winning season in a long time. Yeah, you can say that. I mean, 5 wins. Cedric Pearl got the 5 wins. When 2015, 2015, 2016, whatever the year is that he finally beat Tuskegee. And Cedric Pearl is now the head coach at Allen, which we'll talk about in a second. I think the biggest thing for Central State is finishing. Now they got a hell of a schedule to get through at first, right? I mean, they got a hell of a schedule at first. So they have FCS. They have FCS Morehead State, which I think they got a good shot in that game. So the best thing in this transfer portal era, I think what's going to make the SIAC so strong is teams that didn't really win last year. They were able to keep people out of there. The bigger schools did not come clawing around in their rosters. Central State returns 10 of their 11 starters on football, on defense, I meant. And 2 of those starters I like really, really good. I think they had the best linebacker duo in the country. They had Jaleel Lenore and they had Dominique Davis. Not only were they good in conference, they led the Dominique Davis led the country in tackles for loss. And I mean he was a dog coming off that backside. Dominique Jaleel Lenore is another dog, probably one of the best run stopping linebackers in the conference. Then you got Mike White on that defensive line. They had a solid defensive line. Hell, I thought that they were going to beat Tuskegee when they came down. Like, you look at them, they win the first game. They beat Mississippi Valley, right? Then they turn around, they lose a close game to Allen, and they lose a close game to Tuskegee. And it's almost as if they lost focus because then they ran into Albany State. They get blown out Albany State. Then they ran into Miles, and I expect the team to get blown out by Miles. I felt like Miles was just on a different level last season. We'll talk about them a little bit more. But Central State, then they hauled off 4 wins. You know, they went on this four-game winning streak. And you look at them like defensively, they're solid. Offensively, that's the problem because it's like you just never know about that quarterback position at Central State. Now, here Kendall Booney is the guy. He's been in the program a while. He looked good at times last season. At times he didn't look good, right? But if the coaching staff decides to put their faith in him, I think they got to ride it out, right? You got to ride the Central State. You got to ride the quarterback out. And I think there has to be something. They got a new offensive coordinator at Central State. So it's going to be interesting to see just how they do. So you're right. They got key players coming back. You got Brandon Brock coming back. I think the only guy you don't have coming back on that out of that wide receiver course is E.J. Walsh. But other than that, offensive line is pretty much intact. So I think Central State has a really good shot at being good. But I just think that the SIAC is going to be a good conference for those teams that were able to stay together. Early on in my evaluation of the conference, I kind of had some teams real high. But the more I study these rosters as the rosters come out, I think that even when you look at how the teams rank out, I think whatever that from 4 and 5, you can switch any team that's ranked 4 all the way down to 12. I think you can change them all. I think the only school that to me does not have a legitimate shot at a winning season is Morehouse. I think Morehouse is the only team that legitimately cannot have a winning season. Other than that, I hope the SIC has the tiebreaker rules out because I just think these teams are just going to be really solid because there's so many of the quote unquote bottom feeders of this conference. They return way too much. They have way too much coming, and I think they catch some teams early. So, for instance, if we jump to Tuskegee for a second, Tuskegee had to replace some components, right? And I think they did a really good job at replacing some guys. I think Tuskegee has upgraded every position but wide receiver because you're going to catch hell trying to find Antonio Meeks, right? Antonio Meeks was just one of those guys that he fell through the cracks and we got him. He's at Louisville now. I saw a depth chart. I think he was 3rd on the depth chart in receivers. So, hey, big ups to that guy. I think he's going to do great. We also lost Corey Petty. I wish Corey Petty would have stayed. I don't see him on the depth chart with Georgia State. But I feel like if he would have stayed, this would have been his year. Got some other good wide receivers at Tuskegee. How well they come along, we'll see. The running backs return. They overhaul the offensive line pretty much. So that's when I get into talking about even if you upgrade your team, like I feel like Tuskegee has upgraded the offensive line, right? I think we gave up 37 sacks last year, and the year before that, we gave up like 52. We've upgraded the offensive line, but getting those guys to jail takes time. You catch a Savannah State week 3, a team that returns a whole lot, right? A team that has a lot of continuity on defense. I feel like that's what's going to make the conference interesting, because if you catch one of those quote unquote bottom feeders that guys have came back, they in their senior year, they in their graduate year, you might have some problems. And we got by Savannah State by the hair of our chin last season. So put them on this season, yeah, you might have a little problem. So we catch them early in the year. We play them late last season, but we catch them early in the year. We're gonna have a new quarterback, right? Somebody said that Tuskegee hadn't figured out their quarterback situation since Jakar Atkinson. I feel like no, we've had some pretty good quarterback play. Been inconsistent at times at the quarterback position. Do I think we have a quarterback? Yes. I think Tuskegee has a quarterback, and that should scare everybody in the conference. But how fast can that offense mesh? Because Tuskegee with a quarterback, that's the SIC championship, right? But how well can you get it together? And with a conference like this with so much continuity and playing some of those teams early, it's what's going to catch you. It can either make or break you. So Central State in that Morehead State game, I got Central State getting the upset. I don't know if you call the upset against Morehead State in the way that they run their athletic program, but they played a really tight game with West Virginia State last year. But I think if Central State comes out and leans on that defense, right, and don't just the offense can't keep going, in and out. I think Central State can get it. Now we had Lacey and we had Justin Nard. Yes, Justin Nard. And matter of fact, shouts out to Justin. Justin is now the head coach at Hillcrest Evergreen. He knocked off Rain High School, ranked. I think Rain was ranked number 14. He knocked them off Friday. Had a couple conversations with him. Shouts out to Lacey. Lacey was an integral part of us knocking off FAMU in Mobile, and also getting some quality playoff wins, right? So I think both of those are good. Now the problem with that, Benny, is you ask old Tuskegee people, they'll say that they were inconsistent. They'll say that Lacey won us some games, but they'll say Lacey lost some games for us too. And one comes to mind with that first year we've gotten to Division II playoff, and he fumbled that ball on the 1 yard line to stop us from winning, which I don't think was a fumble. I think that the referees botched that up, which can bring me to my next point, that it's time for the SIC to get instant replay. We can have instant replay in Division II now. We can have it. And I think it's the job of our commissioner to push these programs, push these schools to do whatever they need to do to not be the last conference, to not be the last team, to be the last conference in Division II to end up with instant replay. I would be curious as to how long will we be able to go on before schools start saying that we can't host Division II playoff games. So, last couple of seasons, Benedict was able to host a playoff game. But with so many of the other conferences now going to instant replay, I think that we're gonna have to do something pretty soon, because I can see some schools starting to complain about that. Can y'all use tablets in D2? Yes, there are coaches that use tablets in D2. I don't even think some of them use it properly, but that's a story for another day. When I get into in depth about my conversation about coaching in the conference. Who else we got? I don't have my list. We talked about Tuskegee and JCSU because let me just say this: Tuskegee gonna beat John C. Smith. Tuskegee needs to beat John C. Smith by 3 touchdowns or more before I consider them a legitimate threat to win the conference. They got to convince me, okay? And I'm not 100% sold. I don't know what that defense is going to look like. I think our offense is going to score a lot of points, but I want to know if our defense can stop people. We got a new defensive coordinator in Kevin Watson, and also Joseph Carter is back on that defensive staff. So, we're going to see. We're going to have to see what's going on with that Tuskegee program. But I got Tuskegee beating Johnson C. Smith. Who else we got this week? Man, we got to talk about this one. We got Edward Waters and Morehouse. Now, Edward Waters was everybody's shocker last year. Edward Waters came and stunned Tuskegee on homecoming. Then that next week, they turned around and they stunned Albany State on the backs of a quarterback by the name of Jaron Russell. Now, I looked at the roster at Edward Waters. Do I think they have their quarterback issue solved? Yes and no. Will they have quality quarterback play? Maybe. Maybe they have good quarterback play. It's just one of those things we have to see. My question is, can they protect up front? They had to do a lot of max protection last year to stop quality D-lines. The question is, can they protect the quarterback and allow Brian Jenkins, who's the offensive coordinator at Edward Waters, and you all may remember him. Brian Jenkins was the head coach at Bethune-Cookman when Bethune-Cookman was doing their thing. He left Bethune-Cookman and went to that school down the road at 915 South Jackson Street, who shall remain nameless. He went down there and took a couple of butt whoopings from Skega and got sent on by this business there. And so now he's winded up at Edward Waters. But I think that he's a damn good offensive coordinator. I had to shout my guy Flicks out. I was kind of allowing Edward Waters to go under the radar, and he was like, hey, I think you need to look at what Edward Waters, the type of stuff they run down there. And I did. I found out Edward Waters, they run some pretty good stuff down there. I like some of the concepts they run with their routes and stuff, So I think the Edward Waters is one of those teams. They normally have a little problem out of the gate, but that's to be expected coming along with transitioning to Division II. Sometimes we don't understand getting guys eligible and all the paperwork that goes into the front office work of running a Division II program. And I think Edward Waters just had to catch up to the time. From everything I hear, they are ready to go. And so we'll just see. I don't think Morehouse stands a chance. I don't think Morehouse has a shot. I don't think Morehouse can keep this game close. If Edward Waters has any inkling of being an SIAC champion this year, they need to beat Morehouse convincingly. To me, if they want to be a middle of the pack SIAC team, they got to at least beat Morehouse by 2 scores. Anything less than that, it is what it is. It might be another 4 or 5 win season for Edward Waters. Moving on from the Edward Waters, Central State, we did Tuskegee, did Edward Waters. We got Albany State at Valdosta State. Now, this is a good one. I think a lot of people have just overlooked Albany State, myself included, right? The Albany State team, it was Coach Quentin Gray's first year And no disrespect to them folks. And I keep saying that, but maybe it comes off as disrespectful. Albany State had no business in the SIAC championship game last year. That's just my opinion, right? That's my opinion. Because I will scream this from the rooftop. The second best team in the SIAC last season was Miles, hands down. If we were in divisions, Miles would have went to the SIAC championship game, and I have Miles knocking off Benedict College in the SIAC championship game. Now, this is why this is called a rebuttal, right? Because everybody else goes around talk about Benedict running through the conference, and they just blew everybody out in the conference. No, they didn't. There was a team that gave Benedict everything they could handle both years. Both years. That was Miles College. Miles was up on Benedict with about a minute and 20 seconds left in that game. Benedict was able to put together a drive and take the lead back with like 30-some seconds to go in the game. And even after that game was over, I could hear the Benedict players telling Miles, see y'all in Atlanta, see y'all in Atlanta. Well, what happened to Miles? They go to Albany State and forget how to play football. They go down there to the Rams den, and they forget what a football is. And they get beat bad. I was calling the game. I can't remember who we played that weekend because I was commentating the game, color analyst on one of Tuskegee games. And somebody sent me the score. And I said, what? Because I just knew that game was in the bag. And maybe Miles thought that game was in the bag too, and just had looked over a quality Albany State. Now, this Albany State, it's the same concept that I've been saying about this conference. If you don't take anything away from this show, take away from this show that there are a lot of teams with a lot of continuity in this conference. Albany State is one of those teams. Yeah, the portal came through, but the portal did not ravage them the way it did some teams. This is already an SIAC contending team. They go and they add some beef up front. They go and they add some beef on the defensive line. They try to get a little longer in the secondary. Okay, so here we go. Albany State. Now, I told y'all, Albany State is a blue blood in this conference. Albany State is a blue blood team in this conference. They're not used to losing. They got a proud fan base, just like the Tuskegee fan base. They don't like to lose. So you got a really strong Albany State team. Now, they go up against a Valdosta State team that, they hired my guy, Tremaine Jackson, down there. He's probably their first black coach in the history. They looked bad the first year. They were ready to run guy out of town. He was able to put together a decent team last year, but Valdosta, Georgia is called Title Town. The people of Valdosta think their team is successful when they win national titles. I hate to tell my guy down there at Valdosta State, he has to win a national title before people will consider him a good coach in Valdosta, Georgia. So for him, this game is a must win for him. For Quentin Gray, I'm sorry. I know we gotta look out. But I'm gonna tell you a story about Cumberland because I saw somebody say salty go Hornets. So I'm tell y'all a story about Coach Cumberland. And when I get him on the show, I'm gonna let him tell you this story. They were debating the fire when Houston Markham was at Alabama State. Now I was a young boy, but I've always been around this program since I was young. And it was talks about Alabama State letting their legendary coach Houston Markham go. Tuskegee goes on the Turkey Day Classic. They go in halftime and they're losing. They are losing this game. Coach Cumberland goes in the locker room And Coach Cummings tell them boys, who was like, they're over there playing for their damn coach job. I don't give a damn about his job. Tuskegee goes out and they win that game. Coach Gray, them boys that at Austin State, they're going to come to that game because they know games like that is going to be determining their coach's job. You got to tell that dirty blue defense, damn Tremaine's job. Win the game. Damn his job. Albany State, that's a winnable game for you guys. That is a winnable game. You were competitive last year. You got to get over the hump. Okay, you got to get over the hump. And to be honest with you, I'm just sick of losing to the GSC. They're not that great. They're not. And to be honest with you, GSC is not what it used to be. It's just not. Okay. It's an overrated conference now, in my opinion. And I think that we can really knock some of these teams off. And I really want Albany State to get that one. I think that'll be a good one for the conference. And we start talking about playoff implications. That's one of the ones that we got to get. Now, we got another matchup. We got Miles versus West Alabama. Now, West Alabama is a mediocre GSC team. It's a very mediocre GSC team. There's no reason that Miles should not dominate this game. But I got one problem with Miles. They can't get caught peeping at Bama State. You got to play the game that's in front of you. You got to play the game that's in front of you. And that's one of the things that I want to see from Miles. I want to see Miles go 1-0. I'm going to use Coach Beers. Everybody want to go 1-0, but they need to adopt that model of 1-0 because you're a really good team. Okay. On that defensive line, you returning Zion Sharp. You got Jermichael Rogers, and then you go and add this big-time App State transfer. This big-time App State transfer. There's no, you're not telling me that as I looked at that offensive line from West Alabama, they should not be able to block the defensive line for Miles. Miles' offensive line should be able to hold up, run the ball against West Alabama. Cam Ivory, if he's your guy, fine. That's good. Let's ride with him. I felt like before Klein Peter came late last summer, I felt like Cam was your guy last year. Cam was also the quarterback that you almost knocked off Benedict with, right? So Cam, he can get the job done. Ride the highs and lows with him. I think he's going to be good. But I just want you to handle business, Miles. Handle business. Beat West Alabama. And should be a good one. And then we'll come back next week and we'll talk about how I got Miles College beating Bama State by 7, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. Who else? Make sure I ain't miss no other SIC game this week. Allen doesn't play. Lane doesn't play this week. Oh, the bus. The kids of the bus. How did I almost forget this one? The Benedict Tigers take on Virginia State. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't know what the hell Benedict is going to look like. They got 100 new players on that roster. Their coach has said, the coach said right off the rip, he said this last week, he said, whoever get in the way of us, like I'm driving the bus. We're going to run them over. Benedict is the only team, the only SIAC team that I'm picking to lose in this week 0. I got V-State beating Benedict. And it's for the same reason, right? So I got to be fair across the board. to be fair across the board, is to say the continuity of Virginia State is going to be too much for I don't care if Benedict, well, I can't say Benedict is going to be better. Do they have experienced guys? Did he go out and recruit experienced guys? Yes. But experienced guys to play together. Experienced guys that can come together and play quality to play together football, because you know things going to go wrong. Things are going to go wrong. Communication. How well does that team mesh? Right? How well does that team mesh together? I think that's the question. Will Benedict be able to be good later on down the season? Maybe. But it's just too many question marks to go against Henry Frazier at this moment. And as much as I told y'all earlier, y'all can call me a CIAA hater, but I just don't see Benedict having it to get past a Virginia State first game. I think that's a really tough game for them right off the rip. It's coming. Miles beating Andrew Body. I'll say this. I don't know whether Miles is beating Andrew Body or whether Miles can beat Chris Barnett, the offensive coordinator. I like a Miles defense against a Chris Barnett, and I'll just leave it there. Now, unless Andrew Body takes that team on his shoulder and lead, which he very well can, because that's what real experienced quarterbacks can be, right? That's what real quarterbacks can be. Real quarterbacks can put a team on their shoulder and ride them to victory. That's what a Jakar Atkinson was at Tuskegee. Quarterbacks that would just take a team and just, hey, let's go. Let's ride it out. Is Andrew Body that? I will say that my watchings of Andrew Body is limited because I don't follow the SWAC that well. And when I saw Texas Southern, most time they were losing, so I would turn TV off. But I watched a little bit. I watched a little bit of the spring game with Andrew Body. And I'm going to talk about this next week, right? A lot of people talk about Bama State defense, and I should not really get on this. I think 3-4 years ago, Alabama State had one of the best defenses in HBCU football. I always forget the kid's name that was up front. They had a really big nose tackle up front. I mean, he was solid. And he was an anchor for that defensive line. So every time I see Bama State's defense, I'm always comparing it to that particular defense, right? Because I even look at, if you go back and look at the Tuskegee versus Alabama State game, if Frank Clark, yes, that Clark guy, he was a dog. If you go back and look at that Tuskegee film, if I'm Aaron James, I'm kicking myself in my own mouth, my own behind. I'm kicking myself because those running lanes that an offensive line for Tuskegee that really the whole season had gotten pushed around. The offensive line for Tuskegee got pushed around a lot in the conference. Those running lanes that offensive line, go back and look at it. It's on YouTube. Go look at it. If we would have ran the ball, we could have whooped Bama State. But now James is one of those coaches, he wants to throw the ball. Hands down. He wants to throw the ball. But if he would have committed to running the ball against Bama State could have very well had 2 Division II losses last season. And that's just a God honest truth. That's no hate to Bama State because I've given Bama State a lot of praise. Do I think Eddie Robinson has that team on the right trajectory? Yes. They're a lot better than the Alabama States that I'm used to seeing. I think that he's solid. Somebody told me that if he loses this year, is he looking for a job? Hell no. You hadn't found anything better. This is the best looking Bama State program I've ever seen. And I've seen quite a bit of them. They were good, right? And it's just one of them things where, like, hey, The best Tuskegee teams always ran the ball. Yes, even when he was there. That's what's kind of confusing. If Sam Shade beat Eddie Robb again, he might find himself working in Huntsville. Very well could be. I don't know why. I don't know why Sam Shade name doesn't come up well anyway. And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna end this show. And this is gonna be a end of the first show. It was a rough first show, but we got through it. But let me say this: Sam Shade is a damn good coach. Sam Shade is a damn good coach, and I mean that with all that's in me. When Reginald Ruffin left Miles, he gutted Miles. Okay, he took whatever he wanted with him, and he bought him to Tuskegee. We all celebrated. We all rejoiced at the Tuskegee faithful, right? He came over. Miles struggled. Miles' first game was against Alabama State. Can anybody tell me what was the score of that game? It was like a 13-6 game. It was like a 13-6 game in Sam Shade's first year at Miles. That Miles team went 1-9. They came into Tuskegee for homecoming 1-8. Mind you, Tuskegee had taken all the quote-unquote best from Miles. Miles took us to 2 overtimes, a 1-18. Now the very next season, now if I'm AD, this is the type of stuff I'm analyzing, right? Even I'm the AD at Tuskegee, this is what I'm writing down. Be honest with you now. We hired a coach, even though he turned around and be the AD. But this is still a branch from what we pulled from out. We felt like Slater needed to go, and rightfully so. Slater needed to go. We pulled from there. We struggled to beat him the first year. Sam Shade took a 1-9 team and took them to being 4 points away from being 9-1 the next year. 4 points away from almost flipping in the reverse. And those 4 points came against, they lost by 1 point at Arkansas Pine Bluff, a game that was taken away from them. They would have had 2 Division I wins. They scored twice. The second penalty was an ineligible man downfield after the guy was pushed in his back. Arkansas Pine Bluff should be ashamed of themselves. And then the broadcasters of that game, they're going to say, well, if he keep a team like that, he won't be at Miles long. Hee ha 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 ha. Y'all know y'all stole that game from Miles. Then you lose by 3 to Benedict, the 2-time undefeated SIAC champion. He was 4 points away from being 9-1. Tuskegee goes to Miles, and they beat us like we didn't even deserve to be on the same field with them. They beat us like the other Division I teams beat us. We got convincingly beat by A&M. We got convincingly beat by Bama State, and we got manhandled by Miles. 38-10. 38-10. And from the very first snap, Miles showed us that we didn't belong on the field with them. That's after 1 year. Now, mind you, we hired somebody because we could not get over our Miles hump. Slater had just fell into a slump. We couldn't get over the Miles hump. We bring a guy, he guts him. And this man is able to take the scraps and almost beat you, and then turn around that in his second year and beat you convincingly. That's a hell of a coach. And he doesn't get a lot of respect that he deserves, but Sam Shade, he's made me a believer. He's made me a believer, and I am so nervous. We play Miles for homecoming, our 100th homecoming. Now, whether that'll be our first game under lights, I'm not sure. That's what I've been hearing. I can't confirm or deny that. I just got a funny feeling. I'm sorry, if Miles beat us on homecoming this year, either we got to fire somebody or we got to fight. End of discussion. We got to fight somebody or we got to fight. So whichever one it is, we just gonna have to knuck up. I mean, they're gonna come in there with that big band and shouts out the ski band. You know, they be starting to put a little bit more size on. You know, we got more than 3 tubers this year. We got 8 tubers, you know. So hey, shouts out to Marching Crimson Piper. But you know, Miles gonna come there, they 15, 20 tubers, and they're gonna be loud and playing ball and parlay back at our band because they're gonna be so loud, and we just can't lose the Miles. And that's how I end the show. Ski, we cannot lose the Miles. And I'll catch y'all next week.